Welcome to Buddhaland podcast. I'm Stacy. Today I'm joined by Michel Pascal. Michel Pascal is a meditation teacher, author, singer, composer, and award-winning film director. He is known worldwide for his revolutionary impact on mental health and spirituality, bridging the ancient wisdom of contemplative traditions with the very real challenges of modern life. Michel, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much, Stacy, and first, congratulations for Buddhaland for what you do. I love what you do to make a bridge between the ancient tradition and our crazy world. So really, I am very happy to be with you with this conversation and all your friends. And Happy New Year!
Thank you.
Happy New Year!
A happy Chinese New Year.
Yes!
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Your spiritual background draws from both Buddhism and Christianity, two very rich and distinct traditions. Can you share how you first encountered these two traditions and how they have shaped who you are today?
I have a blessing in my life, an amazing blessing when I was a child. I was abused during many years. And it was my blessing because close to my home there is a church. And when I arrived in the church, I was in peace. And I realized when I was so young that there is no life without peace. So I start immediately, when I was so young, 5 years, 6 years, very attracted by the Catholic Church. And at 6 years, I discover Saint Therese of Lisieux, Little Flower, Santa Teresa. So I was very attracted because in Christianity, we feel a presence. We can feel the moment, the Christ, a quality of peace grander than ourselves is inside of us. But after, it was not enough for me because I was fed up of the judgment, too much judgment. You must be like this. You must be like that. Don't be like, I say, oh, come on. For me, I cannot imagine that Jesus was judging people. Who we are to judge someone? We do what we can. I say that because we will talk. As you know, I direct the meditation for the prisoners of Los Angeles. Who we are to judge someone. So I discovered Buddhism when I was 20, and I was very attracted because in Buddhism, we don't believe, we feel. Buddhism, it's not a religion, it's a science of the mind, a science of the emotions, a science. But you know, Stacy, it's funny because Catholic people say, Buddhist people, they don't believe in God. And Buddhist people, they say, Catholic people, they don't understand the Dharma, the Rigpa, you know Rigpa, the clear light. But God, Stacy, the etymology of God, it comes from dies, Deus in Latin. It means the clear light. Rigpa means clear light. So Christianity and Buddhism say the same, with some differences, but also they say the same. And I will say the difference is Buddhism, it's the consciousness, but Christianity is the presence. How can we pray if our brain is running all the time? I will reply to your question with a funny metaphor. For me, Buddhism, it's we clean our bedroom, but Christianity, we open our window. Suddenly there is a presence, a quality of love grander than our human. So for me, Buddhism and Christianity are complementary. They must be end by end. But I could say the same with Muslim tradition, Jewish tradition, Native American tradition, or no spirituality. For me, the question is not to be Buddhist or Catholic, Muslim or Jewish. The question is to be happy. And we are happy when the mind is calm.
That's a very beautiful foundation to build from. In the previous episode, I was also talking to Father Reginald. We talk about light, and we just find more similarities between religions than differences.
Every religion, I will say, every religion says the same thing with different approaches, different words, but they say the same. And the reality is beyond religion. The reality is beyond all what, alors I will be very Buddhist. It's very hard sutra, but the reality it's beyond all what we can conceive, all we can imagine. There is something beyond our intelligence. I will say we live in a world with artificial intelligence, but beyond artificial intelligence, there is divine intelligence. After AI, there is DI, something beyond.
Yeah. Also, what's striking about your work is that despite your deep engagement with all these traditions, you often use very secular language and avoid any religious jargon, making your teachings feel very inclusive and accessible to people from all backgrounds. How do you personally define spirituality in the modern world?
To be calm, to be calm. For me, there is no spirituality if our brain is running all the time. We don't learn spirituality in a book. We don't learn spirituality online, in a conference, in a retreat. We feel spirituality the day we calm the mind. I remember my Rinpoche say all time to me, Michel, calm your mind, and in 1 second, you will feel everything. So for me, we talk too much for nothing. And again, many people have a lot of knowledge in spirituality, but they are so stressed. Where is my Buddha if my brain is running all the time? Where is my Jesus if I judge everyone? You know, we go at the Mass, we pray Jesus, Jesus, and just after, this guy is gay, this girl is lesbian, this guy is Muslim, we judge. There is no spirituality. So I will reply to you to say spirituality, it's not a belief, it's an experience. We feel the peace not in a quiet place, because anyone can be quiet in a quiet place. No, we feel the peace in the chaos of the world. You will be surprised, but I give many retreats for the manager of Google in Times Square in New York City. Many years ago, I did that. We came with the people at Google, the big manager of Google, so stressed. And I lead the meditation in the middle of Times Square. And they say, wow, Michel, we realize we can be quiet in the middle of the craziness of Times Square. This experience, to feel the peace in a stressful situation, in a conflict, when you have money problem, when you have problem in your life, couple problem, relation problem, but suddenly you are in peace. This is spirituality.
How to find peace in chaos and how to be calm among all the distractions?
It's very difficult to be calm by yourself. People ask me all the time, Michel, what is your advice? But there is no advice. Who can give an advice today, Stacy? The attention span online, for example. Now, if we measure with electrode our attention, 3 seconds. After 3 seconds, today, we lose attention. How can we give an advice? If I start to say, oh, Stacy, do this, do that, come on. The time of the advice is totally over. And I will say that today, after what's happening with Deepak Chopra. Deepak Chopra is on the Epstein list. Deepak Chopra was the advisor of Jeffrey Epstein. He was his guru. It's terrible. So for me, the crash of Deepak, this is the crash of a world where everyone wanted to give advices. We cannot listen an advice, but the answer to your question, it's not to give an advice, it's not to talk, it's to tune the person, to bring the person on a calming vibration. When you talk quietly, when your energy is calm, there is what we name in neuroscience the neuron mirror effect. Neuron mirror effect. Immediately, it calms the person. Because meditation, for example, it is not a technique. If we consider meditation as a breathing work and posture, as Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche was saying, as Sogyal Rinpoche was saying, Dakpo Rinpoche, you don't know meditation. It's 1%. Meditation in Tibetan, in Chinese, lung. Lung means transmission of energy. So to calm the mind by yourself, it's very difficult at the beginning. We need a teacher. We need someone who can tune our mind on a calming energy. And immediately there is a neuron mirror effect. There is a resonance. Suddenly you feel the peace of the person. You must know, Stacy, when someone talks to someone. Psychologists at Columbia University in New York, where I give sometimes some conferences, they have measured when you talk to someone at the end of a conversation, you lose 93% of the words of the person. You forget 93% of what the person say. But what you keep, this is the energy of the person. You keep 93% of the energy. So when we tune the mind of someone, we calm the person and you feel better immediately.
Energy part is very interesting. Referenced many Tibetan teachers and also some contemporary gurus that people also want to worship in this very chaotic world. But for yourself, you developed meditation for daily stress, a method that has been adopted by Fortune 500 companies, universities, and even within the prison system. And I'm just curious to learn that what makes this approach distinct from traditional meditation techniques or contemporary, let's say, mindfulness practices.
Stacy, you have seen the crazy world where we live. How can you say to someone today, oh, my friend, take a deep breath? How is it possible? Because CEOs say all time, Michel, please don't say that to us. No one is able to focus. Attention span 3 seconds. We must understand that our world has changed. And the world changes all the time. But for me, the real pandemic of our time, this is the fact that we lose attention. We have lost our attention because the brain is running all the time, all the time, all the time. We are in over brain activity. So in our approach, we never say the difference with mindfulness, for example. We never say to the person, take a deep breath, be focused. The person is unable to focus. It's the same, Stacy, if you see someone in a wheelchair and you say, let's go to make a jogging. The person says, Stacy, I cannot, I am in a wheelchair. No, but let's go to make, but I cannot. We don't want to realize that our world has changed. So in our approach, we don't give advices. We don't give exercise. We don't give tips. Just we tune the person on a calming vibration. And we do that in the stressful situation. For example, I train the elite of the police many times. What do? I train the police officer. I have a student, for example. She's an amazing police officer, so stressed. She's a woman, a beautiful woman. And she say, Michel, when I go to arrest someone, men split on me, it's very difficult as a woman. And just by fun, I train her to calm her mind inside the car when she drives so fast with her gun to arrest someone. We reprogram the brain of the person inside the stressful situation. When I teach at SpaceX, for example, for the astronaut, for the team who prepares the next expedition of the moon, I teach inside SpaceX. SpaceX, it's a company like every company in America, overstress. When I teach at Google, we don't go in a yoga studio to imitate a monk living in a world with no stress. No, we are at the workplace, in the open space. We reprogram the brain inside the stressful situation.
Yeah, I mean, when you say reprogram, could you please elaborate on that? Is it some techniques that you can share, or you would prefer to keep it
No, I am here
private?
to share. No, I don't keep anything private. Stacy, I am here to help everyone to explain the thing. Again, meditation is not a technique. Again, the cliché that we have about meditation, the master, we say Tibetan, Chinese master, the authentic master, were explaining that meditation, it is not a technique. There is technique, breathing, visualization, but it's 1%. The real benefit of meditation, this is the transmission of energy. Lung in Tibetan, L-U-N-G, the neuron mirror effect. We tune the person on a calming vibration. And when I talk about to reprogram the brain is a neuroplasticity. And you know that in neuroscience. Every millisecond, we change our brain. So when we train the person in a stressful situation, when we tune the person to be calm in a stressful situation, immediately you reprogram the brain because you give to the brain the neuro signal. I can be calm in the middle of the stress. I can be calm in a conflict. I can be calm when I have money pressure. I can be calm in the traffic. With my team, we train Uber drivers in Los Angeles. What do? We don't go in a yoga studio, try to imitate a monk. We go on the rush hour on the freeway of Los Angeles. You know, Los Angeles, 200 kilometers of traffic. We imagine. And the driver drives, and one of my teachers tune the drivers, lead the driver on a calming meditation. The day after, when the driver enter in the Uber, his brain has understood. This is like the reflex with your cat. If you put the food of your cat in your kitchen, but after if you put in the living room, the cat will say, where is my food? We reprogram the brain of the person because we train the person, we tune the person inside the stressful situation.
Yeah, you probably heard my cat meowing.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's a very refreshing but also constructive way to look at meditation. For sure, on the, let's say, mindfulness or spirituality market, we see more workshops in a yoga room or in a meditation room. And we
Stacy,
don't really.
let me say something to you. If you calm your brain, your mind in a calming place, it's great. But when you go back to your stressful situation, you are stressed again. Your meditation collapse few minutes after. It's the same if you say, oh, I go in vacation on an island, wow, it's a resort. 2 days after, you go back to Hong Kong, you go back to New York, you are stressed again. It means nothing. Why? Because you don't train your brain in the stressful situation. You train your brain at the opposite of the stress. You try to escape from the stress. So it cannot work, of course.
Yeah, I think your approach definitely does much better at identifying the stressful situation for a specific person and just target that problem for that specific person. So it actually helps them. But what we talked about, like yoga studio and very general meditation programs, they teach you just one method. Of course, you can use that method, learn about it, but it may not so specifically address to your problem and your situation. So I actually find your method very helpful because our stress does not come from the yoga room or the meditation room or our meditation mat. It comes from our workplace and the stressful situation that we have to deal with on a daily basis.
If you train your brain in a quiet place, first, it's good. Me, I love to practice yoga every day in a quiet place. We need quiet place. I don't critique that, of course. But I say it's not enough because if you train your brain in a quiet place, when you go back to your stress, you are stressed again. So where is the benefit of your meditation? Nowhere. And we don't live in a yoga studio. We don't live in a monastery. We live in a crazy world. So stressful. And I will surprise you. I will say, Stacy, stress is a fantastic teacher because we need to reprogram our brain. We need to change our concept of meditation. But again, all the Tibetan masters were saying that I say, many people say to me, oh, Michel, your meditation, it's a revolution. Not at all. No, all the masters were explaining what I say to you. Meditation means integration, not to escape from the stress. But when you are in the traffic, when you have conflict, when you have problem, how can I go back to my peace? How can I wake up from my sleepy mode? You know, when you overthink, the brain, as we say in neuroscience, is on a sleepy mode. You are dead. And this is the experience of the death alive. I am sleeping. In Christianity, when Jesus said kai aletheia in the Old Greek, in the real scripture, kai aletheia means wake up, wake up. We wake up when we calm the mind in the stressful situation, not when we try to escape in a resort.
Yes, that's very insightful. Once I was also interviewing Anam Tutarmboche, based in the US. He also talked about the importance of negative emotions, like what you said, the abuse experienced as a child and also the stress that we experience in daily life. They're all fuels for our spiritual growth. What we need to do is not to run away from it, but to really take advantage of these so-called blessings, the obstacles.
It's a martial art.
Yeah.
Meditation for me,
Yeah.
it's a martial art. You use the force of the stress. It's very Chinese that I say, it's very Asian. When I was so young, I loved to practice martial art. But martial art for me, this is really meditation. You use the trauma, you use the stress to transform the bad energy in a good energy. But again, I say that, but again, for me, when you ask me what is the difference between our approach and other approaches, again, for me, it's just my experience. But the time to give advices, to give tips, come on, baby. It's over. No one pay attention. Expert, they say, no, mais I have an advice. You must do this, you must do that. But where do they live, these experts? They live in a monastery? This is not the real life. Me, I was living in a monastery. I left the monastery because I say, I am in a resort. In a monastery, you have no money. So there is no money problem. So you talk about a suffering that you never live, because money is the first causality of stress.
Yeah, especially in today's world.
In this world, no. We need to understand that our time has changed. And the time to give advices or to say, you must do this, you must do that, people don't care at all. Sorry, when I teach for the prisoners, many times, they say, Michel, if you say to us, take a deep breath, you are not respectful. You don't realize how life is difficult. Just you copy-paste your wellness map. I say, no, my friends, I don't teach that, because I know when we talk like that, we don't realize our world has totally changed. And what I love in Christianity, when Jesus appeared, it was a revolution. When the Buddha appeared, the story of Shakyamuni was a revolution. All time, spirituality make revolution. But today, if we say, take a deep breath, do this, do that, but there is no revolution, because we don't realize how people suffer, as we have never seen. You know, Stacy, I work on the suicide prevention. I have directed a film, a feature film. We get 5 awards and 14 nominations.
Congratulations.
Of Best Feature Film of Hollywood, Best Feature Film New York Awards, etc. Anyway, but when you realize that suicide is the second common cause of death from 10 years old, when do we will understand that our solutions are totally unadapted, totally outdated? How can we say to someone, take a breath, be focused, practice every morning? So this morning, I have a friend, Buddhist monk, he sent me a message. Say, Michel, it's very simple. Every morning, you must dedicate 10 minutes for the meditation. I say, my friend, in which world do you live? Have you realized that no one is able to focus? So we must understand that our time has totally changed and we must be adapted.
Yeah, I also wanted to talk about your film. I was wondering what inspired you to take on such a deeply sensitive and important subject.
My last feature film is about suicide prevention, and I am a suicide survivor. So my life was too much difficult at the moment of my life. I tried to take my life. A Catholic priest saved me at the last moment. He saved my life. I love priests, I love nuns, I love all these people. He saved me. And his name was Father Pascal, like my family name.
I see.
And since a lot of years, I wanted to make a film about suicide. So I wrote a script and I proposed to my friend Gabriella Wright, the amazing actress. And Gabriella was genius in the film. And you know, Stacy, I was not expected at all to get awards. But it was crazy to see that many film festivals choose the film. You see on your email, suddenly you are chosen by the New York Movie Awards Film Festival. You say, oh my gosh, they select my film. Oh my gosh. And the week after you receive, congratulations, Michel, you are the winner of the year. And you receive that second, third, fourth, 5 times, and it's not finished. It seems 2 other awards are on the way. So all is in the hand of God. We never know what can happen. We never know. And I love America for that, because in France, no one was interested by my film. No one. But in America, I did my film like that, and the film started to make success.
Yeah, so it sounds like the US is the place for you. I mean, in addition to this meditation methods, you've worked with an incredible diverse range of people, like the film crew that you mentioned, and also managers at Google and SpaceX, as well as underserved and marginalized communities. Do you find that people from different backgrounds face unique mental health challenges, or are there common struggles that unite us all?
I will surprise you. Between prisoner, CEO, British, students, actor, entrepreneur, is zero difference. This is all time the same problem. The brain is running all the time. And it can be, you can be rich, you can be poor, you can be an astronaut. I teach for the astronaut. You can be a celebrity, you can be what you want. The problem is not the social condition. The problem is not if you are rich or poor. The problem is the brain is running all the time. How can we stabilize the brain? How can we calm the mind? And we calm the mind again when we tune the person. I work tomorrow with kids, gang member, kids at 12 years. Stacy, they have guns, they kill people. It's crazy what they do. We reduce the crime at 60%. With the prisoners of LA at Amity Foundation, we have 0 suicide. Since 10 years, Stacy, suicide, second cause of death. Suicide, the population incarcerated, is the most affected by suicide, 4 times more than any other population. We have 0 suicide. 100% positive opinion. At each of our sessions, we make an evaluation. Astronaut, prisoner, celebrity, homeless. We ask to every person, how do you feel? We have in 12 years, close, or we have 100% positive opinion, because this is the same brain. This is the same problem. For me, the problem of our time, it's we are in overactivity. So we forget to be alive. We forget to be present. Stacy, I am with you in your podcast. I am on time. I am present. I love your questions. I try to be the most precise possible. But I am wake up since 3 a.m. this morning. It's close 7 p.m. in Los Angeles. I direct a film. I prepare a concert. I have many meetings. I have teach many times, etc. But I am present because you know why? How can we become present in 1 second when you think about the death? For me, it's very Buddhist, that I will say, but it's also very Christian. For me, the best teacher, this is the death. When you think about the death every day, it calms the mind. Today I talk to you, Stacy. Maybe this is our last evening or your last morning. We never know. And it will happen. So when you think about the death, you appreciate every person that you meet. And I will finish saying to you that the best teacher, this is the next person that we meet. You are my teacher, Stacy, because I need to honor you. I need to listen to you. I need to pay attention. Every person that we meet is our teacher.
It speaks to something very human in all of us. And you mentioned death. It can be a taboo in many cultures, but I think indeed Buddhism encourages us to think about death, to think about the limited time our physical body has, and to really think what we want to do in this time frame. And I remember once at a gathering with a Buddhist teacher, Choje Lama, and everyone was so happy about the new year because that is, I think it was a New Year's Eve. And people were asking, oh, Choje Lama, what do you want to say to us, for the new year? And then he was like, yeah, I first of all, I want to say that we're closer to death. And everyone was like, what? But it is true. Yeah, we all need to think about death. And also you pointed out that our struggles ultimately are the same. It comes from our mind. It may manifest in different ways, like the stress at workplace or conflict with other people, or conflict with ourselves. Yeah. So I'm really thankful that you pointed out that everything comes from, I mean, I don't want to point here. It's not just the brain problem. The mind is a very broad term to point to the inner lives. And
The more you think about the death, the more you are alive, the more you are present. And death is the only thing that we can be sure. We don't know if tomorrow we will be rich, we will be poor, we will be sick, we will be whenever. But there is one thing we can be sure. We will die. We will transform. We will enter in another dimension. Our energy will keep going on, etc. But like we are born, we will die. It is the only thing that we can be sure. And
Sure.
again, the more you think about the only thing that you can be sure, the
That's
better
very true.
the better it calms your mind. You don't know. Me, I prepare a film. I don't know if my next film will make success. I don't know if tomorrow I will eat pasta. I don't know. We know nothing. The only thing that we can be sure, we will die. So suddenly, I will say what was saying Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. When you think about the death, you need nothing. You are okay.
Yeah. That was very beautiful. Now, let's talk about art, because alongside your work as a spiritual teacher, of course, you make films. You are also deeply rooted in various arts. You've performed at the Carnegie Hall and taught meditation at the Rubin Museum of Art in conjunction with their Himalayan art collection. How do you understand the role of art in emotional and spiritual healing?
I start to sing on stage. I was 9 years old. When you sing, and I became professional singer in France at 16, 17, and I have the blessing to sing with the musician of Earth, Wind and Fire or the musician of Carlos Santana or exceptional artists like that. And to sing at Carnegie Hall in New York every year since 10 years. It's crazy. When you sing,
Yeah, that's impressive.
oh, life is impressive, not me. When no, me, I am not interested by myself. But I can say something to you. When you sing, you heal. Me, I have healed my abuse by singing. Because for me to sing was the way suddenly to go beyond, to say, I don't care. I want to see the light. When you sing, you enter in another dimension. You realize that life is beyond emotions. It's the same when I direct a film. You know, Stacy, when I direct, I film myself. So I film, I direct, and I edit myself, the film. And when you do that, just you are interested to see the light. As we say at the beginning, Rigpa, God, you want to see something beyond what your eyes are able to see. You want to feel something incredible when you say, oh my gosh, wow, this is amazing. Art, it's to help us to go beyond our perceptions.
Wonderful. To close, I'd love to ask something for our listeners who may be at the very beginning of their spiritual journey. Of course, you mentioned that advice may not always be helpful, but still, there are people who are out there just starting to explore spirituality and seeking direction. What would you say to them?
Think about the death. The only thing that you can be sure. Sit in a stressful place and look around you and realize that some people that you see today will be not alive tomorrow. And it will be your case to don't be alive. Think about the death. Calm the mind immediately.
Michelle, this has been a meaningful and inspiring conversation. Thank you for your wisdom, your compassion, and the work you bring into this world. Thank you for listening to Buddhaland Podcast. Wherever you are in the world, I'm grateful that you showed up. Until next time.
Again, congratulations, Stacy, for what you do. I will pray for you.